welcome to another episode of the J Scott Ascension, brought to you by Ascension Media Club. Today, I'm going to be discussing a topic that's extremely close to my heart. Right here, you see Thoth. He is the god of knowledge in ancient Egypt. Right here, you see King Tut. He is one of the most famous pharaohs of ancient Egypt and also the last of the original bloodline. And today we're going to be discussing some of the more controversial aspects of ancient Egypt, including why it's important that we understand the background and the racial and cultural background of ancient Egypt. So if you enjoy this content, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment below. Most people worldwide, including half of my Ashkenazi Jewish family, can trace back their roots and their ancestors' corresponding contributions to the world today. I am adopted and do not know much about my biological father, my black side. Still, I am very much aware of how history in most countries is taught through a Eurocentric lens that ultimately favors the financial establishment still dominating the world and enslaving global nations in debt today. The narrative is controlled to cover the long list of crimes that still prop up the establishment, gave the African diaspora a self-fulfilling inferiority complex that is in the process of being broken, and maintain control of the resources in developing countries. The denial in the academic community is so strong that many scholars claim the artifacts found right here from the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization depicting the original settlers of Egypt being people of Arab descent. The defacement of African-style noses and lips chipped off many Egyptian monuments is a more commonly known example of evidence of attempts to rewrite history. Seen here is a picture taken on my trip to Egypt of an even older attempt to change the narrative that the world has ever seen, where subsequent Italian conquerors tried to paint over a temple to take credit for it, but stopped short before the project was ultimately finished. The first recorded history of ancient Egypt as we know it speaks of two different empires coming together. You have Lower Egypt and Upper Egypt. Cairo and the areas surrounding it going up to the Mediterranean were considered Lower Egypt, but Upper Egypt, further south, closer to sub-Saharan Africa, where we see the darkest skin tones in the world today. When I was there a few months ago, I had the pleasure of meeting some local people in Aswan, where I bought this statue, who are direct descendants of ancient Egyptians of Upper Egypt. Seen here is my new friend Abdo. Narmer, from about 3150 BC, was the first king thought to have conquered and united Upper and Lower Egypt. Here is the Narmer palette showing the image of the conquest. All records show him coming from Upper Egypt, the region closest to sub-Saharan Africa, where my friend Abdo's family has been for thousands of years. With the first king likely being from Upper Egypt, which was further south, much of the political power would likely have remained there, closer to other black civilizations that still neighbor Egypt today. Here, we see another photo I took in the Valley of Kings. On the right, you have a king from Upper Egypt, and on the left, you have a king from Lower Egypt. You can tell the difference by their uniquely shaped crowns depicted with similar skin tones, coincidentally. According to the Cambridge Fitzwilliam Museum, quote, Kemet was the name given to Egypt by ancient indigenous inhabitants. In a modern context, the term Kemet has become associated with placing Egypt in its African cultural context. There are many links between ancient Egyptian and modern African cultures, such as the headrests and hairstyles like the side lock. This and other evidence support the idea that it was in fact an African culture in addition to being geologically in Africa, end quote. The term Kemet translates directly to black land. Though many mainstream scholars explain the meaning to derive solely from the fertile lands surrounding the Nile, which is dark in appearance, it should be noted that the Negroid race is the most genetically diverse race, with many shades present in indigenous societies, and with the darker skin tones being the obvious marker. Ancient Egyptians depicted themselves with varying shades, primarily brown or darker, which matches many Africans today. The most powerful gods, including Osiris, who was said to have been the founder of Egyptian civilization, are depicted as having darker skin tones, with Osiris having one of the darkest. As time went on and Egypt began trading with other empires, outsiders would start moving in. Eventually, it was conquered by several different empires, the European and Arab, empires that wanted to enjoy its riches, learn more about its mysterious history, and in most cases, claim it as their own. Quote, "The history and culture of Egypt has always been a source of fascination with academics and the public alike, and for good reason. Ancient Egypt is universally recognized as one of the premier civilizations of the ancient world and an outlier to the common narrative of the West being the foundation of civilization. Because of this, interpretations of the biological racial identity of ancient Egypt have played a critical role in forming various ethnic, cultural, and political groups' perception of their heritage and identity. This has led to conscious attempts of these groups to claim the legacy of Egypt as their own through a variety of methods, creating uses and abuses of history that have been directly linked to the political and cultural concerns of the time." End quote. Hitler was known as one of the worst leaders of all time. And while most people are entirely aware of King Leopold and his crimes against humanity, Germany paid Jews reparations after crimes against humanity committed against them in World War II, for example, the famous Holocaust. At the time, not a single African country, at the same time, not a single African group or country has ever been compensated for slavery, and sympathizers are labeled as extremists for suggesting their situation, primarily caused by slavery and the subsequent systemic racism that followed, be remedied. The same economic interests that profit off the systemic racism using their earnings to shape history and education in their favor. You can draw a straight line showing how European elites figured out a few hundred years ago that dehumanizing their fellow earthlings based on skin color and pursuing that strategy overtly then and covertly now results in centralized profits. Whitewashing the history of ancient Egypt to minimize the role of some people of the Negroid race in establishing the longest lasting and arguably the most amazing civilization in history, considering its level of achievement, is a small part of the dehumanization agenda. That, along with wide-reaching media manipulation and covert policy, disproportionately impacts people of color and empowers the systemic racism of today. Admitting that ancient Egyptians were primarily black culture that got more diverse and then displaced as time went on is a big step towards solving our racial problems, because it establishes how much narratives really need to be questioned. It provides a better appreciation for the contributions of Negroid people to the world today. The self-confidence and pride generated by understanding the past achievements of people they share a race with could inspire more unity and progress in the African diaspora today. All right, everyone, thanks so much for taking the time to check out this episode. Today, if you enjoyed this content, I need you to subscribe to the channel. I need you to support free speech and make sure you're subscribed to the Rumble channel if you're watching this on YouTube. And take a visit to ascensionmediaclub.com, where you're going to find a lot more info on ancient history, politics, finance, and vegan recipes. Because, treat the temple right and the mind starts working right too. So don't forget to like, share, and comment below. Let us know what you thought about the video, and stay tuned for a lot more content like this coming soon.